Ooh, welcome back
Hi.
to chapter 2, baby. Chapter 2. So,
I'm only in it for
today
the money.
yeah, basically, right? That's gonna be the theme of what we're talking about today. And today we are going to be examining chapter 2 of why we do what we do. It's gonna be who I was trying to run with the rhymes right there, but it didn't work out very well for me.
I wish it would
Anyways,
have.
I wish too. I feel like it was definitely an easier rhyme scheme. To who? I could have done better with that. My English major genes are disappointed in myself. But anyways,
Just
hi
wait till your
everybody.
kid. Oh, I
Wait
was
till
gonna say
what?
wait till your kid's a toddler. You'll be
Yeah, and
rhyming
then
all
the
day,
rhymes will be flowing. I
flowing.
feel like they kind of do. I mean, maybe it's I don't know if I would call it rhymes, but the songs I create, they're next
You,
level.
you do.
Like I should make a kids music album, honestly. My beautiful vocal cords.
I
You know
enjoy
what no
them.
one ever said to me? Your voice would make a great podcast voice. No one's ever said that. They're like, we can definitely tell it's your voice. I could never play like what's it called when you just call people randomly as a
Oh yeah,
kid?
like prank phone calls.
Yes,
Like your
prank calls. I
refrigerator's
could.
running. Yeah.
Yeah, I could never do that because people be like, I know who you are.
Oh
I have
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
vocal tone.
Distinct voice. You do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unique. Anyways, welcome back to our next episode of the podcast. We've got a lot to cover today. I got heated a couple times. Each time I read this chapter, I got reheated looking at it. And I feel like it aligns very well with our whole season 1, where we looked at rewards and punishments.
Yeah. I think Alfie Cone, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Cone. I
Mr.
think he
Cohen.
based Yeah, he based a lot of Punished by Rewards off of this book because
Yeah.
there are like the same stories.
Yeah, very similar parallels. But we're getting ahead of ourselves right now because we
Mm.
need to summarize chapter 2 for the people who are like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And I believe I have the honor of going first today. Right, Britt?
You do. Haha.
All right, time me up.
All right. Did we like do it like at a hey, if you're just joining us, we're reading Edward Dessie's book,
Now
Why
we
We Do
have.
What We Do.
Now we
And
have.
we're on
Thank you,
chapter
Britt.
2. And
Yes.
chapter 2 is called I'm Only in It for the Money, which is really like
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
a
we could have been more
baller.
explicit with that.
A baller chapter title. Like, okay,
It
are you ready?
is. Yes,
All
okay.
right. Set, go.
All right. So in chapter 2, I'm only in it for the money. DC unpacks motivation and explicitly looks at how extrinsic reinforcement and internal motivation are tied. And he really starts to go against the grain with his research at like this season of his career and looking at how rewards work. So we know that rewards may increase the likelihood of behaviors happening, but we also now know that it's only going to work for as long as the rewards keep coming. And so in this chapter, we look at how rewards work, how they affect the brain. And then we end up coming to the conclusion that, yeah, it rewards my work in the short term, but they change how people feel about what they're being rewarded for. And so when we're looking at motivation, we want to look at what we're actually trying to accomplish, right? Like, how are we trying to motivate people? We're trying to motivate them to actually like want to do things well or just to comply and obey. And so we look at a few different studies here. There's one experiment where college students are doing a puzzle game and they're rewarded for doing the puzzle game, and that makes people less inclined to want to do the puzzle game. There's another experiment in here where people are rewarded for making this like newspaper article that they were doing for free, and then they started getting compensated, and suddenly they were no longer interested in making it. So just different studies are noted in here that look at how being rewarded affects the relationship we have with doing things. And then it's brought back down to money. And I'm not going to have enough time to explain the money aspect right here. But basically, how the more we try to motivate people like this, the more we alienate them and we hurt their motivation. I got kind of tongue tied at the end there, but we tried.
Hey, I think you did really well.
Thanks, friend. Are you ready now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Woo!
On your mark,
Stretch.
get set. Exactly. Summarize.
All right, chapter 2. I'm only in it for the money. DC. Uh, he researches, talks about, goes into, explores the experiments that he has and other researchers have conducted on rewards and how rewards work to kind of create this sense of alienation from being alienated from the self. So he starts off the chapter posing a question. Why are students so unmotivated to learn when learning is a natural desire? You look at any preschool, you look at any kindergarten, these kids are, any toddler, like they have a natural innate desire to learn. Okay, what about school is taking that away? So he begins to study what kind of experiences affect people's intrinsic motivation and what is it about school and society that destroys a child's innate desire to learn. He begins to run experiments on rewards and intrinsic motivation by taking activities participants were originally intrinsically motivated to do. And he introduces an aspect of reward or incentive. So he starts paying people for these originally intrinsically motivating activities. Other researchers pose the same questions. They're running experiments and they're getting the same results that when you reward an activity, the likelihood that people will choose to do the activity once the rewards or the pay stop massively decreases. And then he also sees that performance suffers too.
Powerful ending with that one. I like that.
Yeah. I
Did you
got
just
other
make them on
things
the
that I wanted
spot?
to say. No, girl, I have this written down. Look
Oh,
at
dang.
that.
Okay, I think I should start doing that because I was like, wow, that was so
Thanks.
cohesive and great. Meanwhile,
Man,
I'm like flipping through, like, okay, let's try to
I know.
remember.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I probably should do that too.
I think I've got my podcast process down finally.
Mm.
It only took 3 years. But hey, I showed up with it
That's true,
intact.
right?
Like
Okay, so based on this whole experiment that DC did, right? People getting paid for a task they were doing for free. I want
yeah.
to talk about something that we both experienced doing for free, which is student teaching.
Ha!
So I'm curious, do you feel like your relationship with teaching changed when you started to get a paycheck for it?
No. I think
Really?
yeah. So um my intrinsic motivation has always been high for teaching, learning, behavior in the brain. Always.
Hmm.
A paycheck did not influence that. Although I will say that my intrinsic motivation, if the paycheck was less than what I was earning before, that would
Hmm.
influence my intrinsic motivation. I did experience that. But the biggest thing, and it's always been this way, is that um, if my sense of autonomy or my sense of competency
Yeah.
is influenced, then my intrinsic motivation goes down.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't, yeah, I feel like student teaching is a really bad example because like there is a cost to student, like we're not,
You're paying to do it.
yeah, like the cost is your soul. Student teaching was so hard. It was
That
so
was
hard. It was
such a
stupid hard.
wild season of life, honestly, to think back on the fact that we do that. And
And it's
also,
nothing like actually teaching. Sorry.
really, I feel like my experience was. I think it just really depends on who you have as your cooperating teacher. It's so subjective.
Yeah. Um, I think mine, it was twice as much work and just the amount of paperwork that we had to do and lesson plans that we had to turn in. And I
Mm,
just remember that time being a huge blur and, and you're in school still and I had to
yeah.
work and,
I mean, it definitely was a blur. I will say that.
mm,
But I feel like I was in a great student teaching place where my cooperating teacher gave me so much autonomy. And we're going to talk
wow.
about why autonomy is so powerful in our next episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was
Mm.
wondering that, like, because that's something that you start off not being paid to do, like you're paying for, and then you get a paycheck. And I remember when I got my first paycheck, I was like, wow, this is incredible getting paid
Mhm.
for something I was doing for free
For
originally.
free.
But
Yeah.
yeah, or for a cost, even for thousands of dollars in credit
Right.
hours.
And your
Um,
soul. You
yes,
took
that
a
too.
piece of my soul. Okay.
Um, but I was just wondering how your relationship with that went, just based on reading this chapter. But let's dive into some of the studies and findings, right? So let's talk
Mhm.
about the puzzle study for people who've not read this chapter yet. What went down with the whole puzzle situation?
So the Soma paradigm it's an experiment that he keeps coming back to. Originally, and I think it did start in this he it started in this chapter 1.
Hmm.
Like the first experiment
Yeah.
is he places the Soma puzzle, which is a puzzle that was really popular in the late 60s, early 70s. Um, he places the puzzle in or not he places the puzzle, he conducts the research around this puzzle. This puzzle is like a Rubik's cube. Similar, I mean, not really at all like a Rubik's cube, because it's completely different, but the motivation for playing it is same as a Rubik's cube. Like there's no
Hmm.
it's a game. It's a
Hmm.
toy. It's you do it for joy, for the challenge. Um, so the Soma puzzle uh, is at the center of this research. You have two groups of college kids that they brought in. One group, they said, "Hey, see how far you can get with this Soma puzzle. See how many like puzzles you can figure out." Uh, and in I think it was like 20 minutes, I made that up. I have no idea how long they like worked on the puzzle for, but they worked on the puzzle and then they were
We're not
observed.
claiming to know the methodology.
Right, right. I just like so they had this puzzle. They were told, "Hey, see how many things you can do with it. Like what all can you make
Mhm.
with it?" Um and then they were left alone with the puzzle for 8 minutes.
And
And
that's the
in that
part the
time,
researchers were most concerned with, too, to see what they would
yeah,
do during that time.
yeah. So the question became, okay, so these people, they were just asked to see how many puzzles they could figure out. Like, how many could they beat? What are they going to choose to do during that 8 minutes of time that the research isn't being conducted? Like, this is just kind of wait time. So they could look at a magazine because there were plenty of choices. They could sit and they could daydream, or they could continue to play with the puzzle, which would be um, that would be the measure of intrinsic motivation. So, do they choose to play with the puzzle when they don't have to? Then
Mhm.
there was a second group, and the second group was rewarded. They said, "Okay, you're going to get a reward for every puzzle that you beat, or you have to earn, or you have to beat this many puzzles in order to get the reward." And they did the same thing. They gave them the same wait time where the researcher would leave the room, the Soma puzzle, the magazines, daydreaming. They could choose whatever
Mhm.
activity they wanted to do in those 8 minutes. And they found that the people who weren't offered the reward, the people that were just like, hey, see how many puzzles you can figure out, they were continuously working and um, growing their skill in the Soma puzzle, even after the researcher left the room and the research was no
Hmm.
longer being conducted. So the people that weren't rewarded, they chose to do the activity. They still had intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation, and that's what started all of this research in intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation, was the Soma paradigm.
And that's what led to the next day that was mentioned in this chapter too, about the newspaper students who were writing these articles and then they were rewarded for doing it and then they lost interest. So these results just kept coming up again and again in this chapter, that once you attach a reward to a task that's ordinarily intrinsically motivating,
Mhm.
it reduces desire to be motivated to do it without the reward, which is crazy because learning originally is intrinsically motivating. Right? Like our
Mhm.
kids love to do that and explore, and that's something we do for joy. And I think that sometimes when you get into the school system, you can forget that we do learning for joy. Like it has roots
Mhm.
in that, because it becomes, I mean, education is not just joyful, it's also a tool, right? Like it's something people use to access different things in society.
Mhm.
But education has become so institutionalized, you know?
Yeah. Education doesn't necessarily mean, and he talks about this in chapter 4, education doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean learning, it means being tested and performing.
Yeah, true that.
Yeah.
So let's move on now to the money is motivating argument, because this is something that we hear just in society when you start trying to push back on, hey, rewards are not helpful at improving motivation. You hear people say something like, well, I get paid to do my job, so my students should get rewarded for doing their job in school because their job's to be a student, my job's to be the teacher. What's the argument that's made about money being motivating?
Like, again, or the argument that's being made against it or for it?
Mm. Against it in this chapter.
Oh, so what I took away from it, and it wasn't so much, I didn't take away from it so much in this chapter, it was more in, I think chapter 3 or chapter 4.
Hmm.
I think it's chapter 4. Um, where he really talks about money and it, like, the right type of rewarding,
Hmm.
where it kind of gets confusing, or it doesn't get confusing, it gets ambiguous,
Hmm.
because the when you get paid for a job, you are not getting paid according to how much you do, how much you produce, unless you are like that's like the piece rate payment scale management style that they used to use, like early 19th century. Like, how many bars of dot 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 can you produce if you're getting paid per bar, right?
Hmm.
And that, I think, so with that type of payment, it's pay per yield. That definitely had a huge negative impact on intrinsic motivation. But they weren't using that to intrinsically motivate people to work on in a mine or work on a factory line. If they didn't care if they were intrinsically motivated.
But I think they were just trying to motivate, period. Right? Like they wanted to have more output
Right.
to increase
Yes.
profit. So like,
Yeah.
and this is one of the other things, I don't know which chapter it is, but like the internal question or the internal dialogue that you have with yourself when you go
Mhm.
about creating this reward for people. If your ultimate
Oh, yeah.
goal is to control,
Mhm.
then it's going to backfire.
Yeah. But this was so I kind of got off the path of
I love it.
you were asking like what's the argument against
Mhm.
the what is the argument against money being comparable to use of rewards to motivate.
Mhm.
And I think like going along what you just said, money, when it comes to a job or a career, money isn't used to motivate. Money is used to compensate you for your time
Yeah.
and your effort. And it is not contingent on your performance.
Mhm.
Your job might be contingent on your performance, whether you have it or not, but the salary necessarily isn't contingent on performance. And now, like they've studied it for so long. When the book was written, it was like 1994. They were still using those pay for performance methods, like business. But
Mhm.
now the per oh my gosh, pay for performance methods have been completely phased out in really large companies and organizations because they know that it has the opposite effect on creative problem solving and motivation than what they intended it to have.
Mhm.
So I think the biggest argument that I would say I have against the money equals rewards is that money is compensation at a job. If
Mhm.
you were getting bonuses based on your performance, that would be rewards. Those would be rewards. And you're probably not because they don't use them anymore because they're ineffective. Uh, it's not
And
the
we're
same.
also
It's not
teachers.
right,
There's
right,
no extra
and
money. We're lucky if we get
right.
pencils.
I know. I think like the closest thing to that would justify the idea that money equals like your salary equals the same idea of rewards in the classroom would be attaching the teacher evaluation to attaching the teacher evaluation to the salary that you would get. That is the closest thing I think resembles rewards in the classroom,
Mhm.
and teachers
Yeah.
hate it. Like,
I agree. I was thinking that too, or like the argument that teachers should get compensated based on how their students do on standardized testing, something like
yeah,
that. And I also want to add too with that argument that we have autonomy over our jobs. Like we can pick and choose which job to be at, which school we want to work at. If we want to leave teaching altogether, what we want to do, and our students don't.
right.
They don't have that say over them going to school or not really, right? The options are you're in school or you drop out.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important distinction to make too. I also have a quote too that I wanted to pull up for my quote from this not podcast from this chapter. That's
Mhm.
about money and motivation, and it comes from page 29, and it says, "When people say that money motivates, what they really mean is that money controls. And when it does, people become alienated. They give up some of their authenticity and they push themselves to do what they think they must do. One take on the meaning of alienation is that it begins as people lose touch with their intrinsic motivation, with all the vitality and excitement that all children possess, with the doping of an activity for its own sake, or the doing of the activity for its own sake, with the state of being that Robert Henry called a more than ordinary moment of existence." And that alienation bit is something I wanted to talk about too, because I don't think that's something we think about happening, right? How
Mm-mm.
we become kind of alienated from our own selves. And as adults, even like, have you seen it or experienced it where someone's like, "Oh, what do you enjoy doing?" And you're like, "I don't know."
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like we lose touch with what actually brings us joy and motivates us.
Yeah.
And
Um,
that's wild,
I
you
think
know?
I think it explains a lot. Like I've always said that this has th- the psychological needs, which is what that's the basis of this book is autonomy,
Hmm.
belonging, and competency, right? Um,
Yeah.
it has much larger implications on society than just like rewarding in the classroom. Like an alienation from self, an alienation from intrinsic motivation. It's you're separating, it's you're like feeling a separation from who you are and knowing yourself. That
Yeah.
has major psychological impacts, like major psychological implications for society.
Yeah. I concur.
Hmm.
And we do this. Like we cultivate that separation and that detachment.
In school
Yeah.
every day when we
It ain't
reward kids
great.
for,
That ain't
yeah,
great.
no,
That could be the name
no,
of this podcast episode. It ain't
it ain't
great.
great. No, it's, I mean, the more research that I do on it, the more research I do, like for neurology, like the
Hmm.
neuroscience piece of it, it's not great. It's not great.
It's
It's
not great.
dangerous. No, it's and uh, we're seeing the yield of it, I think, like with
Hmm.
how polarized, how stressed and dysregulated, and the amount of mass violence that happens in our country every day.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
In so many
Uh,
ways. There's so much you can look at
mhm,
in adults. Like I'm thinking like the dissociation that happens too. Like when us as adults are able to like unplug and relax, the amount of adults that go to disassociation and numbing
mhm.
techniques.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. There's
Can
the
start to kiss.
psychological. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, it's but that's why we're doing the podcast, and I think that's why like it is. It's why we started doing what we were doing on Instagram.
Yeah. That's why we're here. And I want to say too that I have a mini training that I made on this topic. I actually
Cool.
called it "Say This Next Time Someone Tells You." Well, adults get paid for work, so shouldn't kids get compensated too? When you advocate for abolishing rewards, I'm the queen of long titles, right? I have a mini training on this as well inside the village. But yeah, that's why we make all these resources and support for teachers because we need it to rewrite the narrative for ourselves and for kids.
Yeah. We needed, I
What's
feel
the
like we, if our culture is going to survive, like I'm to
true
that point of
that?
this, of my journey with this research and with like my experience of not only researching, but working with kids and working with teachers and seeing
Yeah,
like what's going on today,
yeah,
societally speaking.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true because
Well,
we have a unique perspective doing what we do because we work with the students, we work with the teachers, we work with the districts, we're in the
yes.
research.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, we're like
And
all into the pool.
yeah, so the longer, the more research I do, the longer I'm in this role, the more I'm seeing like this is serious. Like this goes beyond
Mhm.
just um is Johnny doing his homework? Like
Yeah.
this has much larger societal implications for mental
Hmm.
health and for violence in our country. It does. It really does.
Yeah.
So, well, I wanted to do my quote.
Yes. Tell us your quote. Let's have a nice segue from mass violence.
Dun, dun,
Ah!
dun. I don't even know like how to like like it's just so I don't know.
Mm.
I'm awkward. Okay, so page 21. How do I motivate people to learn, to work, to do their chores, or to take their medicine? These are the wrong questions. They are
Mhm.
wrong because they imply that motivation is something that gets done to people rather than something that people do. So, as teachers, as anybody anyone in positions of authority, right? Like DC talks about it being like a one up, one down relationship. And everybody, no matter what their job is, no matter who they are in society, they will eventually experience being in both, one up and one down.
Yeah.
So anyone who's in a position of being in like a one up position, we need to stop asking how do we motivate those in one down positions. Instead, we need to ask how do we create the conditions where these individuals can motivate themselves. And if
Hmm.
that becomes culturally like embedded, like if that becomes a part of our norm of saying, okay, well, everybody has this innate, like intrinsic motivation inside them to do what's best and what's most responsible. They have that inside them. When their psychological needs are met, that can flourish. How do we create an environment where everyone's psychological needs are met for most of the time? Now, of course, there's setting and boundaries and all of that jazz,
Hmm.
which he goes into think in chapter 3 or 4, but
Yeah, it's a later chapter, which we'll talk about.
yeah, like it needs to be, we need to change our mindset around
Hmm.
and motivation and learning and see more of the psychological, um, I don't know, like the psychological pieces of motivation and that.
Yeah. The way I explain it to teachers is that we have to go from the mentality of playing checkers in the classroom to playing chess. Like it's a
Mm.
whole different game that we're playing. And when you look at motivation, it's the same thing. Like all these aspects of behavior and how our kids operate, how we operate, it's a whole different
Mhm.
way of looking at it. That's why what we do, it's a rewiring of your brain. Hence why we're called rewired education now,
Right.
right? It's a rewiring of our brain.
Mhm. It
And
is.
that takes explicit learning. And I mean, we're glad you're here on the podcast, but it's not just something that's going to happen listening to our podcast episode every week. Like it takes
No.
intentional learning, discipline, a supportive community around you, helping
Yeah,
you through this process too, because it's isolating,
it is.
right?
It
Did you
really,
make
yeah,
this
it really is.
journey on your own too? Like, were you the only person kind of going through it?
Yes.
Same.
Yes. It
And
was
it takes
very isolating.
longer too when you're doing it on
It
your own.
what yeah, 100%. It not only does it take longer, it's just not as it's just more stressful. It's so much more
Hmm.
stressful. I mean, if you think about it, relatedness, belonging is a psychological need.
Yeah.
So no matter whatever you're doing, like the work you're doing, you need to have some sense of community in order for your brain to feel safe. Which
Yeah.
is really when it comes down to everything. Now that's I'm telling teachers that like when they're your brain is only concerned about being safe.
Hmm.
That's what it comes down to. Autonomy, belonging, and competency, those are the three things it needs in an environment to stay feeling safe.
Yeah.
Like it's great. Like it's taking a really complicated concept and like narrowing it
Spark
down,
noting it.
but it's true. It's true. Like like going back to the longer that I spend doing this research, the more I learn how like simple the brain is, and that
Hmm.
it's like pretty black and white. It's either safe or it's not safe.
Yeah. And
It's super
everything
not
kind
safe.
of comes back to those pillars.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what would your takeaway be for people?
Mm. Um, well, I mean, we kind of just um, what we were talking about just a second ago, where like it takes your psychological needs in order to do this work and flourish with it and to really change how your mindset and like the footprint that you're going to leave on education and this on humanity. um, it takes a village and it can happen a lot faster. Oh my gosh, she'll get that. And that's really funny because I didn't I did not mean to
We
segue.
weren't trying to plug a resource there. We were not actively trying to plug our membership of the village. However,
However, yeah, of course. Um, that's so funny. Okay, so it takes a village. Like to keep intrinsically motivated,
Mhm.
because your intrinsic motivation it is going to boost your level of performance and level of understanding and level of learning and da 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 da, right? It's just going to make you better in whatever you're trying to do. So the more intrinsically motivated you are to do it, the faster you're going to learn and the better you're going to perform.
Mhm.
So, if you're trying to change your mindset and align it with more psychological needs, then, like rewards or punishments or whatever incentive system is being used, classroom management system is being used. If you're trying to change that and shift gears and go into like running your classroom based on psychological needs, I would say your best bet would be to join the village because of the amount of resources and the close proximity you have to us and to the other people that are doing this work. So that's
Yeah,
my takeaway.
and we'll leave a link to join it as well as a special coupon code too for people who come from the podcast so that you can get in after your free trial-ins at a discounted rate because you're the real one if you've been listening for this many minutes on the podcast with us. Um, and then my takeaway is to avoid the trap of playing the wrong game because it can feel so intense when you see a classroom of kids whose heads are down, they're on their phones, they're talking over you, they're not caring in air quotes about their work or about school. It can feel so compelling to be like, how do I motivate these kids? How do I make them learn? You have to remember that the actual game that we're playing is how do we make them want to learn? How do we create an environment where they feel safe and secure to do that? So don't get stuck playing the wrong game in your classroom. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I like that.
Nice. Well, we'll link everything we talked about in the show notes, including the book in case you have not grabbed your copy yet. And we will continue seeing you in future episodes. So until then, we hope this podcast leaves you feeling remoralized,
And re energized.
and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, friends.